I made a couple little leadership notes that, since that's what this basically should be about,
Yeah.
just some of the things I observed
Yeah.
over 7 years that a lot of people already know. But
Well, let's talk. Let's talk about it. I want to hear it. Let's talk about it. Fire
okay,
away.
I'd say the very first thing that people, if you're a leader, the very first thing, in my opinion, is you keep in mind, and I think I mentioned this to you the other night, is leadership starts with caring. Okay,
Yeah.
leadership starts with caring. That means caring about getting the job done. That means caring about the people that you work with, and that means caring about the community. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that someone in a leadership position, if they can kind of keep those things in mind, it'll keep them out of trouble.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, these are just some things that I picked up. Be nice. Don't be a jerk. Okay.
Yeah.
All leaders are nice. And if they're not, it doesn't last very long. And I was in the Strategic Air Command, and the motto was, to err is human, to forgive is not SAC policy. Okay.
Yeah.
Commander-in-Chief of SAC, General Russell Doherty, basically told all his commanders that he was not going to rate them on being a jerk. And in SAC, they had a lot of people like that. That the more they could intimidate you, the better the better commander they thought. You'd be nice to people. And something else I've come across is somebody was asked, "Do you treat everybody the same?" And the guy said, "No, I don't treat everybody the same, but I treat them all fairly." Okay, because everybody's not the same. Everybody's not. And another good example I can think of, there were 2 4-star admirals over in Brussels, in NATO headquarters, and one of them would come in the office and he would go immediately to his office, shut the door, and stay there all day. The other guy would come in, wander around, talk to everybody, see how their family was doing. You know, how's Betty Sue doing? I know she had a concert. I mean, show a real interest in her, in the people he was working with.
Yeah.
Tom Landry had something very interesting. He was a good leader. He said, God should come first, family second, and football third. Okay.
Yeah.
And what he really means is God first, family second, and then whatever your passion is next.
Yeah.
Your grandfather was a good leader. When he became director of the SPCA for Dallas County, he talked to the outgoing guy, and the outgoing guy said, "Boy, your secretary's not, she just can't get anything done." Okay.
Yeah.
And my father figured out, your grandfather figured out, that the reason she couldn't get anything done is because she couldn't get anything done if he gave her more than one thing to do at a time. He gave her one thing to do at a time. She finished it, did a great job, ended up as Secretary of the Year for Dallas County. Okay.
Nice.
So I think that the example there is you got to get the right people in the right jobs. Everybody's not the same. You got to learn to delegate. If you don't delegate, you're in trouble, even though you think you can do everything better than anybody else. And a good leader can walk away and be gone for 2 months, and the organization keep running because the people there know what decisions he or she would have made.
You know, part of that too, part of that as somebody who's run a business is I can tell you, I think, and I'm sure it's the same way in the military. Some people feel like that if they're not, if they don't have to be there, if there aren't people constantly relying on them, stuff like that, they don't feel very good about themselves. But I actually think what you're saying, a really good leader essentially makes him or herself almost irrelevant to the business at some point. Like you should be able to stand up, walk out the door, and come back in 2 months, and if you've designed, a good organization or a good business or whatever it is, you ought to be able to walk away for 2 months, come back, and everything is essentially running fine, right?
No, you're exactly right.
But there's this ego, I think, that some people in leadership positions have. Their ego won't let them feel that way. Won't let them do that, because if they're not constantly making every single decision, no matter how big or how small, their ego gets damaged.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too, and that's a matter of insecurity as far as I'm concerned. But and it's the old thing about it's about we, it's not about me. You got to share the wealth. And I said I saw something on a Arkansas businessman that owned a large company, and this is 2 or 3 years ago, Well, he was shutting the company down. He wasn't selling it, he was shutting it down. And this is what he did. He took all the money that he had in it and he put bonuses in envelopes for the people that had been with him for so long that had made the business. Okay.
Yeah.
And there were people opening up these envelopes, getting $150,000 checks.
Wow.
And you know who got the most money? The secretary that'd been with him for 30 years.
Nice.
Not the engineer that he had for 5 years. He
Yeah.
put a high priority on loyalty. Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really, 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 really good. And the other thing is, as we talked about, you got to listen to your people. I had a buddy in the Air Force, retired as a brigadier general, super guy, played at the University of Florida football. And he told me after he retired, he said, you know, Ed, I went to work for a guy, some hot shot out of Nashville that had his own private airplane. And, you know, he knew more than anybody else. And in staff meetings, you know, he totally controlled them, asked for nobody's opinion. And he said, you know, after about a month, I gave you my opinion in a staff meeting. He said, I gave it to him in the right kind of way. Hey, boss, you need to take a look at this. He said, after the meeting, the guy walked up to him and said, I don't need your input. Jerome said, if you don't need my input, I don't need to have this job.
Yeah.
The point is, you really got to listen to your people.
You know what I tell my people? I have a rule in my office. I don't follow this 100% of the time, but 99% of the time they do. I don't come to me with a problem unless you also have a proposed solution, because I like you're just like you're saying, like your buddy, I didn't hire, there's nobody in my office that I hired to sit there and just take orders. Everybody in my office I hired for their intelligence and for their brains. And I want their opinions badly, because I know that I don't know everything. Matter of fact, there's a lot of stuff I don't know anything about. I can, you know, my office manager, Patty, who's been with me over a decade, frankly knows a lot more about some of the stuff going on at the firm than I do. And I would be a complete idiot not to listen to what she has to say.
Well, you know, when you ask him to come up with a solution, that's not being a bad guy. That's saying, I have confidence in you to come up with a good idea.
For sure. For sure.
I mean, that's a compliment.
Anybody can tell me the problems, but I didn't hire you to tell me the problems. I hired you to propose the solutions. And you know what I found, by the way? Most of the time, the solutions that are proposed are as good or better than the ones I would have proposed. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'll be like, wow, that's a great idea. You know?
Yeah. Thank you for that idea. I won't tell you the stupid idea that I had. But, so you got to listen to your people, and you got to stand by them in the tough times. And a good squadron commander, by golly, will be there when one of his underling shows up in front of the wing commander to get his rear end chewed out. When we were at the University of Kansas, they switched presidents, okay? And I think this is a good leadership trait. Gene Budig was the guy's name, and he ended up being a brigadier general in the Air Force Reserves. But Dr. Budig was like 39 years old. And I went up to talk to him one day, and I could barely hear him because he talked so softly. Not loud like me, okay? But he did that intentionally so you would listen to what he was saying.
Yeah.
And I think that's a tip that good leaders, if they'll make people kind of strain just a little bit to hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I had a wing commander named Martin Ryan. They called him Rip. He ended up as a 2-star. When your mother was sick, he called me in. I said, Ed, I know you're an independent guy. I want you to know I'm here in case you need me, okay? And I saluted proudly and said, thank you, sir. The point is this, I knew I could depend on him if I had to.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that as a boss, you need to tell people, I'm not going to try to solve this problem you got, but if you need me, give me a call. It makes so much difference. It makes so much difference. You never have to call them, but you know you're there. That's the significant thing.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like you got a bridge to go across. Couple of examples. When I was at 8th Air Force, we had a guy that was 8th Air Force commander. We're talking about 3 stars. We're talking about a big boy, okay?
Yeah.
And every time somebody would come see him, whether it was a lady from the local florist, he would get out of his office, go down 3 stories and meet her down at the front of the office, okay? And escort her back up. That's what a real leader does, okay?
Yeah.
And we had another commander there that he would bring his German Shepherd in and let him loose in the briefing room. And can you imagine a young captain up there trying to brief a 3-star general with a German Shepherd sniffing at his leg? I mean, that's not cool, okay?
Yeah, that's not
That's-
cool.
That's pretty bad. Dr. Lofton, got to give him a lot of credit. He decided to move the Corps back into the under the vice president for student affairs at A&M,
Yep.
and he went over and he talked to somebody over there and said, "We're going to do that," and they said, "Well, I'm going to resign," and gave Dr. Lofton a note. Dr. Lofton said, "I'll keep this for 24 hours." And I'm not going to tell you who the person was. It was not the commandant, okay? It was somebody else.
Yeah.
But anyway, Dr. Lofton was smart enough to know that people make split-second decisions that they regret later on.
That's right.
He said, "I'm going to keep this for 24 hours. I'm not going to submit it. You're okay. Get back with you if you need to." And the guy ended up deciding that, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. So I think a good boss, if someone's having a bad day, comes in and wants to quit, stuff like that, you need to let them have time to cool off a little bit.
Sure.
So anyway, I would suggest that as a good boss.
You know, the other thing I was told when in the conversation I had with Dr. Lofton was yesterday. We're filming October 13th today. It was yesterday. And one of the things he said, and you mentioned this earlier, was when he was president at A&M, and I think when he was chancellor at the University of Missouri, he made a point every day to get his butt out of the office for at least an hour or two to walk around campus and to hang out with his people. He said there was a lot of people in leadership positions that he had been around that would literally show up, they'd go into their office, lock their door, and you wouldn't see him for 8 hours.
Yeah.
But you know, Dr. Lofton made the exact same point you made, that he made a real effort to get out there amongst his people. And I told Dr. Lofton, when I first started working as a lawyer at Fulbright and Jaworski, I had a mentor who was a very prominent partner at Fulbright and Jaworski. He was the head of the appellate section, which was a big deal. And he used to tell me, when I first started, you need to make your own copies. You need to staple your own papers. You need to make your own coffee. You need to know how all this stuff works.
Yeah.
And it's not just knowing how it all works. It's also like some of the Marine Corps officers I've talked to on the podcast have said, you also need to make sure that your folks know that you would never ask them to do anything that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself.
Sure. No, I think that's an excellent point. And when a boss comes in, I don't care how much rank he has or how big a title he has. If he makes the coffee one day or empties the garbage can, that's such a small, teeny thing, but God, it means so much to your people.
You know what, Dr. Lofton, you know the story he told yesterday? He said, and I didn't realize this, but his wife's a big equestrian. She likes riding horses. And so she actually got, I don't know if you ever saw this, but she got to ride in with the Parsons Mounted Cavalry on a horse. And Bowen Lofton walked behind her and shoveled the horse crap behind her horse. And you know, he was telling this story and he said, man, there were a number of people that said, you know, you're the president. You shouldn't be shoveling horse crap in public like that. And he goes, no, I want to show people that even though I'm the president of the university, I'm willing to get down and do the dirty work. And I thought that was, literally shoveling horse shit. I mean,
I figured he was going to say, hey, when you're president of a major university, you do this every day.
Yeah, well, that's what he said. He goes, that is, yeah, he did kind of say, he goes, that is kind of your job, is shoveling shit all day anyways. But anyway, great points.